And welcome to this first carrier update brought to you by Powerfleet. I'm Zach Strickland here with Tony Mulvey. While Anthony is enjoying those lovely palm trees down there in the Caribbean. So Tony, we've got our tender rejection index here, and it continues to fall. Now, I didn't get to make the call about dropping below 10%. Thomas got to do that one. So 10% late last week, 9.9% on Saturday. First time below that number since June of 2020, and it continues to fall. And that's the big takeaway here, is that we still have a lot of room in this market for these rejection rates to continue to drop. Now, normal tender rejection rates, I don't want to say normal, but it's kind of like when the market is kind of at its most stable environment, is right around that 5% mark. That tends to be where we have oversupply almost, but not a lot of disruption, not a lot of volatility going on. Service is pretty relatively stable and meeting expectations, but this 9%, so we still got that 4.5 percentage points to kind of fall before we enter that period. Now, the problem with that is that the market is a little bit it's been so overheated, and to regress all the way back that quickly to that point in time, to this point where we're seeing rejection rates at almost full utilization, it's going to have a lot more disruption, and it's going to have a tail to it. And so that's why this is important, is if it were to find a floor and kind of slow down its progress, it would kind of help stabilize the environment a little bit, but right now it is still falling rapidly there's nothing there that's showing us that it's going to kind of prop it up for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, you look at where we were last year, right? We talk about throughout the year, you saw contract rates rise, and rejections kind of fell in that 700 basis points throughout the year. Well, we've exceeded that in the past 8 weeks.
8 weeks, 2 months.
Yeah, so I mean, you're seeing this rapid acceleration in these rejections, and you see it all the time, and your chart of the week touched on it, the contract market, right? That's what this shows, like what's flowing through to the spot market and what carriers are thinking about the spot market. And what this kind of shows me that, hey, maybe things aren't as good in the spot market, and
yeah,
we see it in the rates.
Yeah, we've fallen through the spot market now, like a lot of it. Now we're talking about contract market erosion. We did not see contracts getting eroded year over year in March, which was the point of the chart of the week. But in April, we're starting to break through. Accepted volumes are now dropping throughout April, and that is what's happening now. So that's the big takeaway. However, I've got some halfway decent news for the carriers out there. Let's look at the next chart. This is our year over year outbound tender volume index. The blue line there, of course, the one that is this current year. And we have that trough. That's the Easter trough, so don't get excited about that too much. But there is a little bit more of a tail to it. Now, if you look at seasonality in terms of Easter itself, I think it's explainable here. We're still kind of digging out of that. The Monday after Easter does have a little bit of a hook pattern to it when you see that little upturn there last year in the orange line at the beginning of April. You can sort of see that we kind of buried it in 2020 there with the pandemic, but typically we see a little bit of a hook pattern. So moving into tomorrow and the next couple of days, the outbound tender volume index stalling out here. If you look at the beginning of Easter to the end of Easter week, last week, it's relatively flat. So there is a little bit of hope there that maybe we are starting to hit a floor in terms of overall shipping volumes. We have all this upstream pent up pressure. Shippers are still ordering a ton of freight. It's coming into the United States. Shanghai's not having as big of an impact just yet to those volumes. And also intermodal activity is still booming right now.
Yeah, you talk about it. Do you think, the intermodal sector, we look at those outbound domestic rail volumes, and they held up throughout much of March and April, really. There was a little downturn, similar to what we saw in truckload,
Easter.
right?
It was simply Easter. Yeah.
And so now we're seeing, it's going to be, I guess, the next 3-6 weeks, once we start to really see the impacts of what happened in Shanghai, before it kind of flows over to the U.S., right?
Yeah.
We're looking
even then, when you're looking at the maritime information, anybody that's been in our beta dashboard knows the Shanghai impact isn't necessarily as big of a deal as we've had in China. There's still lots of other areas for freight to come out of. Yanshan last year, way bigger impact to the overall freight volumes. We almost cleared out the ports of Los Angeles, Long Beach backlog there in June because of it, but this one not showing up quite just yet, even though rejection rates are starting to increase quite rapidly out there. This takeaway here from this chart, though, really pay attention over the next few weeks. Just about every single May, June has a sequential increase in terms of tender volumes. Now, they may not be huge, but just about every single one of them does. So are we going to kind of help form that floor here?
Yeah, we will pay attention over the next few weeks, but that does it for our first carrier update. We'll throw it over to Thomas Wasson and Michael Vincent, who have our first live guest.